In recent days, a significant clandestine diplomatic move has unfolded in the Middle East, one that may herald a shift in regional dynamics. According to Saudi state media, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman received a sealed letter from Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, delivered without fanfare or public announcement, and then forwarded by Riyadh to the United States. The letter reportedly arrived at the Saudi royal palace on Monday, marking a rare moment of direct communication between Tehran and Riyadh since the two countries restored diplomatic ties in March 2023 after years of estrangement. Although officials have been tight-lipped about its contents, regional analysts say the move signals Tehran's interest in relieving tensions with Washington via the Gulf, while also seeking top-leverage Saudi channels to test U.S. responses. A spokesman for Iran's foreign ministry clarified that the message was strictly bilateral between Iran and Saudi Arabia and did not constitute a direct Iran-U.S. negotiation. The president's message to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia was purely bilateral in content, said Ismail Baghai. He added that currently there is no process of negotiation between Iran and the United States. Still, the timing and the conduit, Saudi Arabia, are notable. For Riyadh, the letter serves multiple purposes, signaling its role as regional mediator, preserving its relations with both Washington and Tehran, and positioning itself as an indispensable actor in any future diplomatic architecture spanning the Gulf, the U.S. and Iran. From Washington's perspective, the development arrives at a moment of heightened attention on Iran's nuclear program, regional missile proliferation, and the broader U.S.-Iran standoff. The U.S. is weighing whether to engage diplomatically with Iran and whether Gulf states like Saudi Arabia may act as intermediaries. Earlier this year, Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan al Saud publicly declared that his country fully supports U.S.-Iran nuclear talks and hopes for positive results. At the same time, Iran remains publicly resistant to direct bilateral talks with Washington unless certain preconditions are met. Baghai reiterated that approach, dismissing U.S. claims of a negotiation process. He also characterized talking to a side that does not believe in mutual respect and takes pride in military aggression against Iran as lacking logical justification. So what does the letter signify, and what are the possible implications for the region's balance of power? Firstly, it underscores Saudi Arabia's evolving diplomatic posture. In the years since the kingdom normalized relations with Iran under a China-brokered agreement, Riyadh has walked a tightrope, balancing its historic alignment with Washington and its rivalry with Tehran. The letter places Saudi Arabia in an active intermediary role, a role Washington has long encouraged Gulf allies to adopt in managing regional risks. Secondly, for Tehran, the step serves several strategic aims. By sending a letter via Saudi Arabia, Iran avoids the optics of direct U.S. engagement, but still tests Washington's openness to diplomatic messaging. Tehran remains cautious of entering talks without assurances, especially given past U.S. sanctions and military interventions. The message's secrecy allows Iran to maintain leverage. It can feign openness while insisting on terms and conditions favorable to its own posture. Thirdly, for the U.S., the development offers a low-risk pathway to gauge Iran's intentions indirectly. If Saudi Arabia plays conduit, the U.S. can examine Tehran's overtures without making direct public commitments. The letter may thus function as a diplomatic probe, a test of whether Iran is seeking relief, recalibration, or simply acknowledgement. While the contents of the letter remain unconfirmed, sources suggest it touched on two key themes: appreciation for Saudi assistance to Iranian pilgrims during the Hajj, and an expression of interest in broader coordination or at least communication between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Baghai conveyed that it expressed the Islamic Republic of Iran's appreciation to Saudi Arabia for the services provided to Iranian pilgrims and emphasized the importance of continuing cooperation and coordination. Such messaging reflects Tehran's interest in normalized ties with Riyadh in areas of religion, diplomacy, and regional security. Beyond that, speculation centers on whether the letter contained, at least implicitly, an indication that Iran might be open to indirect engagement with Washington, a proposition Saudi Arabia would be keen to facilitate. Indeed, President Donald Trump recently stated that, "I am totally open to it, and we're talking to them, and we start a process." He added, "It would be a nice thing to have a deal with Iran." Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman also told Trump, "I will be working closely on the issue, and we will do our best to help reach a deal between America and Iran." However, Iranian officials have moved quickly to downplay any suggestion of immediate or direct negotiations with Washington, even as the letter circulates. Separating the bilateral Iran-Saudi channel from Iran-U.S. negotiations appears to be a deliberate strategy for Iran. It preserves salvation and leverage while protecting internal political credibility. The diplomatic backdrop is crucial to understanding the significance of this moment. The Middle East remains volatile. Iranian missile and drone strikes, U.S. military deployments, proxy warfare in Yemen and Syria, and the ongoing Gaza-Israel conflict all contribute to a region teetering between confrontation and cautious diplomacy. In this environment, Gulf states like Saudi Arabia are recalibrating away from outright confrontation toward hedging, mediation, and diversification of alliances. For Saudi Arabia, mediation offers strategic advantages. By aligning itself both with Washington and Tehran, albeit carefully, Riyadh can position itself as the indispensable broker for any future settlement. That confers leverage. In return for its facilitation role, Saudi Arabia might obtain advanced defense cooperation with the U.S., bilateral economic concessions, and greater regional influence. Indeed, reports suggest that Washington has floated a potential sale of advanced fighter jets, F-35s, to Riyadh as part of a broader engagement strategy. Yet the path is fraught with risks. Any Saudi-Iran rapprochement may encounter resistance from Israel, which views Iranian enrichment and regional proxies as existential threats. Saudi Arabia's domestic public, especially young and digital-savvy Saudis, remain sensitive to Israel's actions in Gaza. As such, Riyadh must balance its external diplomacy with internal legitimacy. For Iran, the risk lies in appearing to capitulate to U.S. or Gulf demands without securing tangible benefit, which could spark hardline backlash domestically. So what might happen next? Several scenarios emerge. Indirect engagement scenario. Saudi Arabia uses its channel to inform Washington of Iran's readiness to discuss nuclear or missile issues indirectly. The U.S. responds with limited diplomatic overtures, perhaps via back channels, while Saudi Arabia stands by as mediator. Status quo preservation scenario. The letter circulates without substantive follow-up, preserving the message as a signaling exercise rather than a step toward direct talks. Tehran uses the exercise to sow uncertainty and hedge its options. Escalation avoidance scenario. Saudi Arabia and Iran deepen bilateral cooperation on pilgrimage, commerce, and regionally stabilizing measures, thereby reducing the risk of miscalculation while Washington remains in the wings. Breakthrough scenario, less likely. The message triggers a broader framework where Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the U.S. embark on a coordinated path toward conflict reduction and nuclear diplomacy. For now, this remains speculative. Within Riyadh, officials are likely mindful of the optics. By placing itself as the recipient and forwarder of the letter, Saudi Arabia signals that it retains agency and influence, that it is not simply aligning with Washington, but navigating a more independent and assertive regional posture. This aligns with the kingdom's broader vision of diversifying alliances and reducing over-reliance on any single power. From Tehran's vantage point, the letter is a low-cost, high-reward maneuver. By sending a discreet message via Saudi Arabia, Iran holds open the possibility of engagement while framing itself as still in control of the process. It also avoids the domestic stigma of making overt concessions to the U.S. That said, Iran continues to emphasize that talking to a side that does not believe in mutual respect has no logical justification. For Washington, the letter presents an opportunity with caveats. It allows the U.S. to test Iran's willingness without investing heavy resources or making public commitments. However, any serious diplomatic follow-up will still run into Iranian demands, Gulf states' conditions, Israeli concerns, and domestic U.S. politics. The domestic appetite for engagement with Tehran remains cautious given Iran's nuclear history and regional behavior. Analysts say the letter is part of a broader trend, Gulf states stepping up as regional brokers, even as great power rivalry intensifies. Rather than simply siding with Washington, states like Saudi Arabia are seeking to hedge their risks by keeping channels open to their neighbors. This strategic posture reflects a pragmatic adjustment to an uncertain region. That said, the timing of all this is important. The backdrop includes escalating tensions over Iran's nuclear program, missile launches, and drone attacks from Iran-aligned proxies. Moreover, Saudi Arabia itself faces threats to its oil infrastructure. These are motives for Riyadh to seek some stabilization corridor with Tehran. But they are also constraints. Any deal seen as too soft on Iran could backfire domestically or within the Saudi royal court. If the letter serves primarily as a signaling device, its real value lies in what follows: the follow-up negotiations, the public posture of the parties, and the architecture of mediation. For now, the message remains hidden. The next moves will determine whether this was a diplomatic flourish or a meaningful pivot. Observers will watch closely for whether Saudi Arabia publicly references the letter or simply quietly conveys it to Washington, whether Tehran adjusts its rhetoric about direct talks with the U.S., signaling a shift in posture, whether Washington responds with any overt acknowledgement of the Saudi-mediated channel, whether regional partners, especially Israel and the Gulf Cooperation Council states, react to Saudi-Iran engagement with concern or move to block it. In conclusion, the delivery of the sealed letter from Iran to Saudi Arabia and thence to the United States constitutes a subtle but potentially significant development. It places Saudi Arabia in the driver's seat of a delicate regional dialogue, offers Tehran a method of indirect engagement, and presents the U.S. an opportunity to explore diplomacy without committing publicly. Whether this proves to be the first step toward conflict reduction or simply another gesture in the region's shifting diplomacy remains to be seen. For now, the message is less about what was said and more about what it might lead to. Whatever unfolds, one thing is clear. The old binary of Gulf states siding unequivocally with Washington against Tehran is evolving. The Middle East's next chapter may well be written not by open conflict, but by discreet letters, quiet diplomacy, and the behind-the-scenes broker.